Hello, everyone. I'm taking over for Amelia this month while she's on PTO, um, as the lead for this working group, even though I have no official power whatsoever. I also am like failing at my one job a little bit because I accidentally scheduled a doctor's meeting for this morning, so I have to leave in about 15 minutes. However, Ben over here can answer all the logging and metrics questions that are raised, or to like hold court on those topics. And Jeff, I believe, should be able to hold court on everything else. Jeff, sorry for putting you on the spot. The let's go ahead and just kick it off. I guess the first item on the board is everyone. I guess is everyone. I'll just share my screen just in case. The first item on the board is the proposal to change the algorithm for byte-based log rate limiting. I think hopefully we've all had a look at this by now, and we've all had a chance to talk about it. I believe we talked about discussing one thing in particular in this meeting. That was Jovan. I believe you proposed the idea of going back to a timeout. So rather than in this proposed solution where we introduce a penalty box, you proposed we could switch back to what we used to do in the log line limiting, which was for every second that we experience log rate limiting, we emit one log line saying error, you're exceeding your limit, or something along those lines. I think we've had some discussions on our end about this, and I think we're leaning towards keeping the penalty box, although you did raise some valid ideas and some good points about why the timeout system was good. Do you want to jump in and talk more about your counter proposal, Jovan?
I don't have counter proposal, but I was simply sharing our experience, what we had so far, because from time to time we have some backend services that change something and the apps cannot catch up, and we have problems that the apps are getting rate limited, and the application log rate limit the application log rate limit count metrics also becomes a limiting factor for our metric stacks. So at the moment we're simply filtering out, but we can keep that, and depending on the dropping all the logs, I'm also for that, because we also noticed that the previous behavior where the logs were buffered in the executor. It was also interesting that when we were seeing some behavior that depth which was rate limited was stopped, and because all of these buffered logs were stayed somewhere in the space between the executor and log aggregator, we were getting like log load for 5 up to 20 minutes, like extra log load after the app was stopped because of the buffering. So dropping everything would be a nice thing to do, I would say. And at the other side, if you drop for a second or not, I'm not against. I was thinking maybe like that we had like a bursting mode, so that we say we have rate limit, for example, 400 bytes per second, and then we say that you know, in a minute an app gets like maybe 10 bytes per second burst. So we give it like a quota capacity that the dep can use this logarithm extra inside of some time interval. But even if we say that we keep it simple and we say that we're dropping everything with penalty box for a predefined time interval, that would be also okay.
Interesting, because introducing the idea of bursting doesn't necessarily like that. We could do that and still do the penalty box or still switch to the timeout. Bursting would be a separate trying to think of the right word. It'd be a separate parameter, I guess. We did experiment a little bit with the idea of bursting when we first were changing from logline limiting to byte-based limiting. I don't think we saw huge benefits from it. Obviously, we weren't running in a production environment. It was just whatever edge cases we felt like testing in the moment. Ben, do you recall like what we actually ran bursting against to try and determine if we wanted to include bursting or not?
No, I think we talked about bursting as well locally. It's hard to say without knowing kind of what you're setting your limit to and what kind of logs you're trying to get through. I think there was definitely some difficulty in terms of like, if we allow bursting, it leaves room for people to want to adjust like how burstable things are. And I think rather than making a decision about what the default burstiness is, we just decided to not allow burst. That sounds like what I remember, at least.
Sounds right.
Yep. That's totally fine. Also, if you, from a practical point of view, even if you allow bursting, it does when an application does something wrong or something bad happens with the application, and we had like flood of stake traces or something similar. It happens for a longer period of time until the application owners do something about it. So even if you burst or not, or if we drop some part of the logs and let some through, it doesn't really make a difference, I think. So maybe we can start with a simple solution, like with the penalty box, and then we'll see how it goes.
Sounds good. Cool. Yeah, hopefully this introduces more like contiguous blocks into the logging output and does away with that issue of too many error log lines being output. Anything? Also, oh, sorry, go for it.
No, I wanted to mention that it's also interesting that most of the people are using like default settings for the loggers, application loggers. So nobody cares about adjusting some things like we had, for example, in the line-based log rate limiting, that everything is packed as a single line, because we can have like lines up to 64 kilobytes, and then they're divided in the executor in multiple log messages. So I guess cutting the logs and letting some byte-based throughput would be is much better solution as well, from that point of view as well.
Yeah, I think down the line there's some other ways we can do some interesting things with byte-based stuff. I know Renee Chu had proposed the idea of truncation on the issue, which is another possibility for the future. Actually trying to figure out if maybe we could be truncating the logs in some way, although that comes with its own difficulties. But byte-based versus long-based, line-based also opens the possibility of like truncation, right? Still getting some of the stuff. I don't know. It's possibilities. Anything else anyone wants to say about that proposal? All right. Otherwise, we'll probably move to implement the things in it pretty soon. I should have been taking notes. Melee is so good at that. I'll try and write something down right now. Jovan, you had the next item. It's before you go into it, it's possible that I'm going to have to leave somewhere in the middle of this. So if I'll post like a little Zoom message when I gotta go, and I'll let y'all continue talking. If someone is down to take notes, please do so. Otherwise, the session is recorded, so there's always something to look at. Jovan, hit us with how to send custom application metrics to log.
Yeah, lately we're getting some requests from application developers that they want to send custom metrics, and to get them through Logaggregator or syslog drains. And but I was searching through the repos and to find some things what we have at hand at the moment. And from what I've seen is that we have the Go Logaggregator library and the Logaggregator tools repo as nice examples, but then we have but then in such cases we have to provide certificates. So certificates, client certificate key and CAs, so that the application can be, one application can send logs to Logaggregator via the API. So I was thinking like, do we have any other ways how to provide a way to application that custom metrics can be ingested by Logaggregator, so that during the search, but only a few moments before starting the meeting, you also have this in Pivotals. You have this metric register CLI, which I find it a bit interesting, but I haven't taken a look at it. So
Ben, you want to take
any ideas?
Yeah, so I guess I think there's a little bit of interesting history around the custom metrics. I know we've had trouble getting some adoption around it ourselves. I know there's kind of two awkwardly parallel efforts there. The app autoscaler has its own kind of implementation of metrics. It looks very similar. So sorry, let me pull back again. I've been on something like 2 or 3 efforts to enable custom metrics on the platform. And the original effort was a service broker that you would attach to your application and you could push metrics to. And we saw that we were like, okay, this is a custom interface. It requires making push HTTP calls to implement. Customers weren't really implementing it, and it was kind of sketchy to do a push to a service broker. And also, I don't think necessarily scaled that well. I think that looks a little bit similar to what we were doing, what App Autoscaler has at the moment. We also have, and both of those were closed source efforts. Of course, you can look up documentation on all this sort of stuff, how this sort of stuff works. Not that hard to access. But the second effort we did was syslog drains, but not really. The only reason we use syslog drains is because it's an easy place in the API to put stuff. But more or less that also exists kind of off platform. There's some wish I've had at times to have something like Prometheus scraper or something else handle app metrics. I don't think, bye Carson. I don't think I've gotten much traction necessarily on that effort. Of course, there's internal pressures to like, or at least lack of pressures to try and prioritize introducing this into prompt scraper. But it's definitely something I feel like could be a way to do things. The awkward thing about the log aggregator tools reference is I don't know, it feels very, I would not very much not suggest letting your application send directly to forwarder agent, right? Something that I think, arguably speaking, is we try and keep as important is kind of like your tenancy boundaries, right? And if you have access to log aggregator agents, mutual TLS certificates, you can emit logs and metrics as any application on the platform. It's definitely something like when we talk about like enabling custom metrics, whether it's through metrics gateway or whether it's through something like metric registrar, one of the goals at some point is maybe to actually limit the amount of metrics you can emit. That's something that we've started to look at, but one of the goals is to make sure that the application can't cross those tenancy boundaries. Broadly speaking, I think we've also pushed more towards open standards. So like something like standardizing around Prometheus metrics is something we've thought, yeah, this would be cool if applications could do, right?
Yeah, but
I
now
know
when the applications would expose a Prometheus scrapable endpoint like /metrics or whatever, then we need a configuration on the prom scraper or somewhere else so that it can scrape these metrics. That's the part that is unknown to me, so to speak. Now that, but I don't know if it was to invest some time in developing some custom component which will simply scrape the metrics and do maybe rate limiting and whatnot, and then connect to via gRPC or something else, and forward the metrics into the forwarder agent or the prom scraper itself, or to have something on top of the prom scraper, some kind of configuration which will be exposed to the application, something like that. I don't know. Find this metrics register CLI. How interesting. There was it's like in the pivotal CF repo, but I want to play with it. I don't know how it works and if it will work in our environment.
it won't. It's kind of awkward that we have that in like accessible repo, and to be honest, I think it's I don't think it's actually very valuable in and of itself. The only thing the metric registrar CLI does is make a syslog drain with a defined format, and like hide that behind commands.
Okay. Okay, I understand.
And so far as functionality, if you grab a CFD and you use the metric registrar CLI, it will do stuff, it will create drains, but no functionality will happen.
Okay, so it simply creates syslog drains. Okay. Okay. We have to collect them somewhere. But I was thinking if it's possible that, I don't know, that the metrics would be forwarded to user provided service, like such a syslog drain as we can configure with the drain mode parameter when creating the syslog drains. If the container metric should be also emitted together with the logs or not, but that would be So practically we have to. Okay. There is something custom thing or.
I'll definitely try and start some conversations internally about this. I think this is, we haven't heard a lot of interest from this in like this sphere. So I'll definitely reach out and talk to my team about it.
Yeah, but now on the other hand, I don't know if we need it practically because if I mean not if we need it, it would be nice if everything goes through a syslog drain and then from a consumer point of view, everything is unified. But we can also, but we can also tell to the app owners that they can, I don't know, simply provide a Prometheus scrapable endpoint in their application with their custom apps, and they can scrape it with something else because the application has a public URL anyhow, so it will be available for such things.
Right.
Maybe we
have
shouldn't
heard
complicate the things that much. That we say that the container metrics and the application logs go through syslog drain, and everything else that you have custom metrics, Prometheus or whatever API you're using for your metrics solution practically.
Yeah, we've definitely heard people doing that as well, setting up like parallel infrastructures for their custom app metrics. They wouldn't end up in your syslog drains. They wouldn't end up in your log cache if you're doing various like org space-wide auditing or larger efforts. It's a lot more work to set it up, but it's definitely something we've heard of. No, they're using public endpoints, which I don't know. Generally speaking, I'd say you should be considering your metrics as just as confidential and secure as your logs. It's not something I think everyone feels the same way about, and depending on how you set up your environment, they might be not very publicly accessible, right? But
but then it's up to the application to do all of the authentication and authorization, I think so.
And so there's definitely, if you have something within the platform, you can ensure that there's both consistency in terms of like from a app operator to developer to like org space operator perspective, various consistency parameters in terms of like how you egress logs and metrics. But you can also, there's hypothetically room to move that from a space where it's public to moving it to a space where it's more securely transmitted.
Yeah, but it would be some custom component at the moment, but it's okay. No.
But I'll start some discussions about it. See how things go.
I don't know if theoretically speaking, if the application exposes, for example, Prometheus endpoint with over MTLS, that would be enough so that they have something on their end. Usually, everyone who uses syslog drains has some kind of infrastructure. So packing another service together with the log management solution, I guess it's not a problem. Okay. I think. I don't know. I have. I have one more question about this talks.cloud foundry. Yeah, I've noticed that in some ways these integrations are changed by the service providers, and we don't catch up with the current versions. And I don't know what would be the process there to update documentation. Do we need to verify that and that everything works is described in the documentation, or can we simply link some things like configure this as described on the service provider side and then do something locally with that?
So this is the streaming logs to
Yep.
third-party platforms and okay. So I recently updated the documentation for, sorry, when I say recently, that's not that recently, is it? Let me check. Back in May, I updated the document. Sorry, back in May of last year, I updated the docs for streaming app logs in Fluentd. So that's probably the most up to date in the streaming app logs kind of section. I don't think the other subsections have gotten updated in a long time. I've tried to, in some ways, I think historically the Logregator team has tried to keep somewhat of an arm's distance away from trying to support specific integrations. I think sometimes we've had teams go in and work hard at a one-on-off effort to either create some docs or in the past create nozzles for specific integrations, but they tend not to be very long-lived or long-supported efforts, so to speak, if that makes sense. So all of these docs are almost certainly way behind, right? I know, for example, I don't think the syslog plugin for Splunk is very well supported, or as you were saying, supported at all. My understanding is we've gone through kind of 2 iterations of Splunk support. The second iteration was the Splunk nozzle, I believe. I might be mixing up the order there. There's also Splunk Connect for syslog is maybe what Splunk would tell you to use these days, which is just a Fluent, no, sorry, it's a syslog ng kind of integration. Streaming app logs to Azure OMS Log Analytics still technically exists, but let me double check something. Nope, not this. Where is it? Send me to. It links to, I think, an old version of the repository. And I don't believe even OMS Log Analytics itself, I think, is a somewhat deprecated product. I think, I can't remember the new name for it. As for the specific services and service instructions for streaming app logs, those are almost certainly all out of date as well. I don't know why we have them as a separate page from Splunk or Fluentd. Sorry, Splunk or Azure. But they do exist. Maybe the streaming app logs to management services is up to date. But if you see some room to like update it, verifying it and then changing the docs, feel free. If you want me to take a look, to give me a ping. I'll probably take a look, although I might not go through the full verification step for doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, what we usually do is to tell them like configure syslog train and platform X, and then the URL should be publicly available and accessible from Platform. That's it. But sometimes people read through the docs and say, yeah, but this this thing doesn't work, this integration is not there anymore, but they're sometimes they're simply lazy to Google the things and to see what's the actual state, but that's okay. I'll take a look into maybe updates.
I know in the past, I had this belief that we had this kind of pull on some degree of pull on like observability tools to like integrate with us. I think I've come to the understanding that that isn't necessarily the case. I think most of the nozzles that existed because we at some point created them. And not because we got people interested in like integrating with Cloud Foundry. In the same sense, I think there was this hope at some point on the team that if we support syslog, that eventually people will be like, oh, well, we should support syslog as Splunk, or we should support syslog as some other external integration. And that hasn't necessarily followed. I think I brought up in the logging and metrics channel that maybe there's some interest at some point to expanding some of the subset of like push egress formats that we allow, right? If we supported 2 or 3 wider supported protocols for sending metrics and logs, maybe that gives us more room to just say, well, if you support these protocols, you can send it to whatever you're receiving to, right? Who knows? That makes sense.
Yeah, sure. We support what we support. If someone else needs something else, they will have to implement it themselves. I have to go now. Thank you very much, and see you next month or somewhere in between. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
And Plum, you wanted to bring up some stuff, right?
Yeah, sorry for not writing them down earlier. Well, first of all, topic number 1, thanks, Jeff, for supporting us with this WOCAT stuff. This will definitely significantly improve the Cloud Foundry resilience in case of availability zone outages. So we noticed a weird scenario long time ago. In case we introduce some sort of a turbulence in some of the availability zones configured, that we are losing not only Diego cells from the so-called unhealthy zone, but we are also losing Diego cells presence from the healthy zones as well. Depending on how the system is distributed, where actually the main WOCAT server is, which is the active Diego API, etc., etc. A lot of key factors which at some point in time lead to weird behavior. But anyway, thanks for supporting us. Well, next topic is another issue which we identified long time ago, and there was a sort of first round of discussion in terms of proof of concept. So we pushed something, then we had a discussion in the proof of concept, and right now we propose some changes. So it's more or less related to the use case when we have thousands of application security groups or applications in a single space. And at some point in time, this generates enormous Diego API outgoing bandwidth. So because a lot of data is sent over the wire to the route emitter, which is actually not used by the route emitter. So right now we proposed an improvement in this behavior. So yeah, the pull requests, I just gave you a link to them. So they are filed from a colleague from our team. So to be honest, I'm not sure what the policy with the reviewing them is. So I'm not sure if it's fair if I do some sort of a review, as I'm a reviewer, but yeah, just was interested and yeah, I'm asking.
Yeah, if you're a reviewer, I would say go ahead and review. We'll probably also need an approver to, merge everything.
Yeah.
But I'll bring it up in our stand up today and make sure someone else has eyes on these updates as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to add a short disclaimer here. Right now we reuse existing desired LRP structure, but I mean, we do not fill all the elements in the structure. Just yeah, want to know what do you think about this, because otherwise, if we introduce a completely new structure, this will introduce a big change in the route emitter. So this is a short disclaimer, just to let you know.
Sure. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, I will do initial review and let's see where we end up. Okay, and final topic again from my side, what actually the policy is for the access to Diego concourse pipelines. We often receive some sort of requests either from you or from someone else who is doing the interrupt stuff, that actually some pipelines are currently broken and unfortunately we cannot see them. Do we have some sort of policy for accessing those pipelines?
Yeah, anyone in the working, I don't remember which one of the working groups in GitHub should have access to it. Is it like you're clicking the link in GitHub and it takes you to a 404 or something?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or unauthorized or something like this.
Unauthorized might be different, but if it's a 404, it's more likely that there's a problem with the integration between GitHub and Concourse for the we're using variabilized instance variables on our pipelines for the PRs, and that doesn't always play nicely. Let me review who should and shouldn't have access, and then I'll touch base with you offline.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. That's it from my side.
Cool.
I think that is all our topics, right? Anyone else have anything else? Cool. Have a good week, everyone.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Next one.
Hey, nice one.